This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, I will recap my trip to sunny Miami, Florida, and also break down a little bit of the Lions' 24-14 loss to the Chicago Bears. Bears with their first win of the season, and of course, Lions dropping to 0-4. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend out there. I definitely did, and I'm here to recap a little bit about it. So I mentioned a little bit last week how I was able to go down to Miami to go to Don Shula's Celebration of Life, which took place at Hard Rock Stadium over there in Miami Gardens. And I got to say, because we've had Ben Mraz on before on the program from last year. Ben is a really good friend of mine. He's a guy that I used to film a football practice with here at John Carroll, and he's actually related to Don Shula. So he's a nephew of his. So that's how I was able to go. Ben invited me, and I was very, very grateful and thankful that him and his dad were able to take me along. So it was a very, very good experience. I met all kinds of different people there, and got to see a lot of really, really neat things. So, you know, first of all, we weren't actually in Miami, the downtown Miami. You know, so I didn't get to, we were more out in the suburbs. So where we ended up staying was the Miami, in Miami Lakes, which is where the Don Shula Resort is. He has a whole golf course and a hotel and steakhouse and all that kind of stuff in this one little area in Miami Lakes. So we actually were able to stay at Shula's Hotel, the one that was founded, I believe, in the early 1990s with the steakhouse in there and everything. So we arrived there and then just was basically chilled in the pool for a little bit. It's a very nice pool over there, by the way. As we met some more people, and it was also the Dolphins alumni weekend. So a lot of the players that were on the trip with us, that were going to be honored at the game on Sunday, and then also at the ceremony that they were going to for Don Shula on Saturday. A lot of them were staying at the hotel, so we got to see a lot of them when we were there as well. So, we had a dinner Friday night, got to meet a lot of the family and all that, and then Saturday comes and we actually got to have a private tour of of Hard Rock Stadium, which is where the Miami Dolphins play. So we get there, and Brendan Fields joins us. Of course, if that name sounds familiar, he was the punter, I believe, for 8 years for the Dolphins. So he came with his family, and they were with us with the rest of the Shula family as well on this tour. And the first stop we stop in is the Don Shula statue, which is outside there when he won Super Bowl his first Super Bowl in 1972. The perfect 17-0 season. He got lifted up on his shoulders, and it's basically him, pointing the number one. And there was a nice flag right there, and just a guy that really had a tremendous impact on South Florida, and honored with a great statue there in front of the stadium. And then we got inside, and we got to see a bunch of pictures of Orange Bowl / Dolphin Stadium moments and all that in history. And I gotta say, from this tour, looking at all the suites, being able to go into the locker room, being able to go onto the field, I can see why Hard Rock Stadium hosted the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Because remember, this stadium was built in the 80s. It's kind of similar, in my opinion. I would compare it to the Palace. Obviously, the Palace is torn down now and everything, but in terms of a stadium that was built in the 80s, by all means could be falling apart, but they put a lot of money into it, a lot of renovations. That's what they did with the Palace. That's exactly what they did at Hard Rock Stadium. All the club's seats in there are new. Just the whole roof in the building is something else too, very unique. So, and the locker room was just absolutely fantastic. A truly first class organization, the Dolphins are, and we were able to see all that, and they had a stage set up on the field for the event that was on Saturday. So went back to the hotel, chilled for a little bit, and then came back on these buses that Mr. Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, provided to us. And so we were able to go to the ceremony, and the ceremony was about 2 hours long. Fans were invited, and then the whole area where there was padded seats. They call it the 72 Club. That's the kind of like the VIP area. That's the seats that we sat in, the padded seats, and then a little bit above was where the normal fans sat. But they had the stage set up, and Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, spoke, and then a bunch of ex-players with the Dolphins like Larry Zonka, Dan Marino, Bob Baunhauer, he spoke as well. And then they had a whole video tribute for him that they had played different segments of the video, and then they would talk about talk a little bit more about it. It's kind of like different eras of his life, which I thought was very unique. And even the Archbishop of Miami spoke because Don Shula was very religious. He went to Mass every single day, Catholic Mass every single day. And, he really, I think a big part of that was he incorporated that into, his coaching and why he was such a good coach, having strong faith and all that. So definitely a very good experience from that end. And also just listening to the stories that these guys had to tell. I mean, there's a reason Don Shula is the winningest coach in NFL history. And in my opinion, the greatest coach in NFL history. I mean, this is a guy that won in many different eras. He won in the 70s with the run. He won in the 80s with the pass with Dan Marino. I mean, he's, 2 Super Bowls in 1972, 1973, perfect 17-0. I mean, he won, I believe he only had 1 or 2 losing seasons in his entire career. So, it was, he is just the epitome of the NFL in that time. And really, he was not only an icon in the National Football League, but this is a guy who was an icon in all of South Florida. So you're just a real sign of strength, and for an area that, wasn't really good at sports back in that day when he took over. The Dolphins famously before him, they would go swimming, if it was too hot out at practice. And then Don came and 3 or 4 practices a day without any water on the field during training camp. So he totally changed the culture around, and he really brought stability to the NFL. He helped that because, back in the 60s, 70s, the NFL was kind of still second tier to baseball, and I think Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, guys like that, they really helped bring the NFL back into the national spotlight and become the number 1 sport in America. So, guys like him and Roger Goodell spoke about it, how much of an impact that Don Shula had on the National Football League. And Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, who actually the business school at Michigan is named after, University of Michigan, the Ross Business School, he spoke and he talked about how Don Shula is the Miami Dolphins. I was joking with some people over the weekend. You might as well just remove the Dolphins logo and just put Don's face right where the head of the dolphin is. I mean, that's how much of an impact that he had, not only with the organization but the entire National Football League in South Florida for sure. So a lot of great words at the ceremony, and just so impactful on and off the field. I mean, everyone, all these guys there. He coached the Dolphins from 1970 to 1995, so 26 seasons, and everyone had a story about him. And it was just, whether it was just a small little story or something that was really big. I mean, he impacted so many guys' lives on those teams that he coached, and has really made an impact because really since Don Shula retired in 1995, the Dolphins haven't really done much. So a lot of their history and his name and image is just spread throughout the stadium. I mean, there's just so many pictures of him and his teams and, different guys that he coached. I mean, his legacy has really lived on in Miami. So that was really awesome and a really, really neat experience. I've read, because being from John Carroll, of course, where Don Shula graduated, class of 1951, I've been very aware of his impact that he had not only down south in Miami, but up here in Cleveland as well. He's from Cleveland. Being able to hear all the great stories from my friend Ben, over the years filming football. And, his 2 sons, Mike and Dave. Dave spoke. Dave was the former Bengals head coach in the 1990s, and then he took over the family business and was very successful for about 25 years, and then just recently he ended up becoming the coach at Dartmouth, a wide receivers coach at Dartmouth, where he went to school, so Ivy League. He was able to fly in and speak at the ceremony on Saturday. Just beautiful words about his father as well. And then Mike Shula, his other son, he was not there, but Mike Shula is the quarterbacks coach for the Denver Broncos. So just some great Shula connections there. It's still in the NFL, and then of course his nephew Chris is the linebackers coach for the Rams. He's one of the only coaches that's been with Sean McVay each of his 5 seasons with the Rams. So it's the Shula name is still in the NFL. That's for sure. All right. So afterwards we had a dinner reception, and they call it the 72 Club, which is like one of their VIP clubs, if you will, beneath the stadium. And, there was a lot of different people there I was able to meet. I was able to meet Roger Goodell. I met Dan Marino. I met Stephen Ross, Mr. Ross, the owner of the Dolphins. Bernie Kosar was down there because he played in Miami for a little bit. Larry Zonka. I mean, all these different players that played for the Dolphins and ex-coaches. We were able to ride to the stadium with them as well because we were on the same buses. So just talking to them in the bus and down there, it was just a very, very fun evening with some very, very good food, very good food. And it was just able to, reflect and really share stories about a man that had a great, great impact on the National Football League. Fun fact, actually, so Don actually coached the Lions. He was the defensive coordinator for the Lions in the early 60s. I believe like 1961, 1962. He coached guys like Alex Karras and people like that. So, and they definitely had one of the best defenses in the NFL of the early 60s. And then after that, he became the head coach of the Baltimore Colts. One man I actually talked to this weekend was Rich Volk. He played for University of Michigan and played for Shula with the Colts. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler. Trying to see if I can get him on the podcast, but he had a really good story, and I had recognized him from some documentaries from the past, and he was really, really, really nice man. Shula actually went and visited Volk in the hospital after Super Bowl III because he had almost like a very serious injury. And of course, the famous Super Bowl III is when the Colts lost to the Jets. One of the biggest underdog stories in NFL history is when the Jets and Joe Namath beat the mighty NFL Baltimore Colts with Don Shula as head coach. So the first thing he did after the game was go visit Volk in the hospital. And that's something that he remembered for the rest of his life, Volk, and of course Don Shula himself. So that was a very special moment to talk to him because I've seen him on many, many documentaries and books before, but that story. So he was really, really nice to talk to as well. And then on Sunday, we were able to go to the game. So they, as I mentioned before, they had the Alumni Tailgate, which was for all the players and that were being honored at the game. So everyone that was wearing a white polo shirt, basically, who was being honored on the field and everything. So they were able to come and we were able to get lunch with them and everything. And so I got to talk to more people like Larry Zonka and Jason Taylor. I got to meet there as well, the Hall of Fame defensive end for the Dolphins. So that was really, really neat. Just a who's who of people in that room. And then we were able to, go to the game, watch. They lost to the Colts. And, it got hot in there and it got loud. I'll say that stadium's no joke. The decibels get pretty loud. Some of those fans they were getting pretty rowdy over there in Miami. So definitely a home field advantage, if you will, but it just didn't work out. Carson Wentz and the Colts were just too much for the Dolphins, who are starting a Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. So after the game, we ended up going back to the hotel, and then some of the Hall of Famers and ex-players were still there, so we were up in a room. We were just talking, having a good time, sharing stories. And it was really, really fun. A lot of these stories were just amazing. Just the amount of stories that they have, and it's just really from a football perspective. And I totally understand the Dolphins. There's no connection to Detroit with these guys and all that, but just from me and me loving the history of pro football and being able to just take that all in, and it was just very, very unique. It doesn't get like this too often, being able to meet all these people and share different stories and listen. So I know Nat Moore and the Miami Dolphins. Nat Moore is the alumni director for the Dolphins, who is a receiver for the for Miami in the late 70s, early 80s. So he was definitely a great event that he helped organize and all that as well. Also, speaking of Pro Football history, I was able to meet David Baker, the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I believe he's listed as 6'7", 400 pounds. He's a really, really big man, but it was a great experience to meet him. And, of course, he was representing the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They had his Hall of Fame bust on display as well, Don Shula's, with just outside the club, they had the 72 club, they had these roses. These are like rose football helmets, these flat rose football helmets on cardboard, and they had all these flowers in them. So they had a helmet for the Colts and a helmet for the Dolphins. Just a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And because remember, last year Don Shula died. He died in May of 2020, but they were never able to have a public ceremony. So this was kind of like the public goodbye, if you will. And I know his widow Mary Ann was there, and the family and all that. So it was just a very amazing experience being able to meet all these, a lot of wonderful people, and to celebrate the legacy of Coach Don Shula, the winningest coach in NFL history with 347 wins. So, and we'll see, because Bill Belichick's the closest active coach to it, and I believe he's like 30 wins off. So we'll see if he gets any closer to that. But it'll be interesting to see. And speaking of Don Shula, actually, there is and I encourage anyone out there who's more interested in this subject to check it out. So Don Shula, there's a Football Life documentary of Don Shula, which is a part of the NFL Network series, and that's one of my favorite TV shows to watch. The NFL and NFL Films, they just do a great job. So Don Shula of Football Life is definitely a great documentary that I would recommend to kind of give you a little perspective on some of the players that were there, and some of the players that were interviewed that I got to meet and all that. So definitely a special weekend. And actually at halftime of the game, they had like a toast to Don Shula. So they gave the family flowers, and we were able to all toast Don Shula, because if anyone knows, the 72 Dolphins, every time the last undefeated team in the NFL loses, because of course they're the only perfect team in NFL history, 17-0. They all met up at Don Shula's house and gave a toast. So, so the ceremonial toast to Don Shula, even though not every team, there's still undefeated teams left, but this was just for the ceremony. So it was a really, really great experience, and I'm happy to share a lot of memories with everyone for sure. And a first-class organization, too. I mean, everything that they did there with Mr. Ross and everyone was just so first-class. Just the respect that everyone treated everyone with, and it was just very first-class. That's a great adjective I would describe the Miami Dolphins, at least from my experience, first-class. That's for sure. All right, so speaking of a Football Life, and I want to transition a little bit more to the Lions, Calvin Johnson, they just came out with his A Football Life back last Friday. So if anyone wants to check that out, go right ahead. They talk a little bit about the Lions, the rift between him and the Lions, a little bit at the end of the documentary, but I don't want to spoil any of it. Go check it out if that's something you're interested in. It's really neat, because a lot of players and coaches give their perspective on him, and just sharing his football life story, basically. So I would definitely go check that out if you can, for sure. All right, so speaking of the Lions, 24-14 loss. They are now the one of two winless teams in the National Football League, 0-4. So the Lions 0-4, and then Jacksonville 0-4, who is just an absolute complete mess right now. And in my opinion, have a joke of a head coach in Urban Meyer. Urban should have just stayed in college. I don't know what any of this, and he's just not a National Football League coach. And the incident that he had on at the bar last week, it was just uncalled for as an NFL head coach. You are being evaluated. You talk about how your players are being evaluated every week, on the field. You yourself are being evaluated everywhere you go in public, and just very uncalled for. And you got to be professional. This is the NFL. This is professional football. You have to act like a professional, and Urban Meyer was not acting like a professional at that bar. So just very uncalled for, and I expect the Jacksonville Jaguars to take some action, if not now or at the end of the season, because this is not working out for Urban Meyer. He's just not ready for the NFL, in my opinion. All right, so 24-14, Lions lose. So, of course, I didn't watch the game live, but I kept checking the scores during the game. There was a food area. We were able to get some food during the game, so I was checking. They had every game on in the TV, on the TVs over there, so I was able to check, and I actually went back and watched the game, and I took a couple notes. So, I don't know what's going on here. So, it seems like, the Lions defense didn't play well again. And did they get pressure? Not really. Again. Did they beat themselves? I think they did. Because, first possession of the game, the Bears just marched right down the field and score. That's never happened before. And then, you actually get into the red zone. You have a little bit of a momentum. And then all of a sudden, there's a miscommunication on the snap where Ragnow snaps it to Goff, who's not ready for it, deflects off a Goff's shoulder pad or something, and into the hands of a defensive lineman for Chicago. That should have been 7-7 right there. They should have scored on that possession. But, nope, turned it right over. And, of course, Bears go march right down the field and score again, makes it 14-0 before we can even blink our eyes. Another interesting call, I thought, was when Dan Campbell called. He went for it on 4th and goal with 9:40 left in the half. So you were down 14-0. You didn't want to take the points and go make it 14-3. Try to go for it on 4th and goal, and it wasn't even like at the 1 yard line. This was like at the 6 or something like that. And they went for it. A little risky move there. Of course, didn't get it. But that's Dan Campbell all year. He's gone for it in those situations, and it's. He's been aggressive. However, I think that was a little too aggressive there. 9:40 left. There's plenty of time in the half. 14. I would have taken the points there, because look how it ended up turning out. 24-14. You take the points there. That you get it within a touchdown. I don't know, but still, I would have taken the points there. I like the aggressiveness. I really do. Trying to trust his guys out there, but I don't think it's called for in that circumstance for sure. Overall, did Jared Goff get sacked a lot in the game? Yes, he did. But overall, it seemed like he was doing a little bit better of a job under pressure. It seemed like he was stepping up in the pocket more. He made a little bit more plays. When he was rolling out and trying to evade pressure. He did get a little more first downs, which I thought was a good sign at least. It didn't look pretty though. Those balls were wobbling all over the place, because we've talked about it before. Jared Goff is not a great quarterback when he's under pressure, but in the game overall, it seemed like he did a little bit better, at least from my point of view. Oh, and the other one too. So Jared Goff, they're about to score, and of course he fumbles in the red zone after getting strip sacked by a defensive end that Sewell was guarding. And Sewell has played a great first couple weeks of football, but he seemed to struggle a little bit, especially down the stretch against Chicago. So definitely have to look out for him, because Taylor Decker still is not back, and it looks like Frank Ragnow is going to be out for a little bit as well. So the Lions are going to be a little bit beat up on the offensive line. Sewell is definitely going to have to step up, and they can't have plays like that. You got to protect Jared Goff, and your offense has to score points. I mean, think about it. If the Lions scored a touchdown on the 4th and goal, and if they score a touchdown on this drive, I mean, they pretty much win this game. So, overall, they just can't beat themselves. And then they actually forced a turnover with a minute left and 3 timeouts. Nice deflection from Jalen Reeves-Maybin. And then Aruarie intercepted it around the 45-yard line. So with 3 timeouts and a minute left, they couldn't do anything. Couldn't even get into field goal range. Those are opportunities that you have to at least get some points out of, especially if you have good field position and a minute left and 3 timeouts. The Lions just could not capitalize. They couldn't, they turned the ball over in the red zone. That's a big, big no-no, especially in the NFL. Can't turn it over in the red zone, especially because your defense isn't playing that well. Your offense has to score as much as they can. So it was just a sloppy game from the Lions. And I know Khalif Raymond had the 2 touchdowns, but it just didn't seem to matter at the end. It just seemed like the Lions were always trying to play catch-up. and they just couldn't convert. They could not convert on their opportunities, could not cash in. Is this something that's a talent deficiency? No. I like a game like that. The Bears aren't a good football team. I don't think this had anything to do with they just had way more playmakers. I'm sick of hearing that from people. Oh, this team has way more playmakers than the Lions. That's why they didn't win. No, the Lions are out there to win these games. And they just kept beating themselves. They kept shooting themselves in the foot because they kept turning it over in the red zone. Not because of talent issues or anything. No, they got to win these football games. I don't care about if this team has no expectations during the season. I don't care about that. These are games that they should win regardless of talent. Now, I totally understand there are some games where the quarterback is just way better in picking apart the defense. I totally get that. I've told you this before. I'm not going to be really, really upset if the Lions lose some of these games because I understand. But however, that's a game where the Lions should have won. Beating themselves in the foot. They're shooting themselves in the foot, I should say. So Lions have to clean some of this up because Minnesota's 1-3. That's who they play week 5. They got to get after these guys. I know Minnesota's got some talented receivers, Thielen, Justin Jefferson, but the Lions, they got to get it together. I'm not expecting a lot of wins this year, but they can't be shooting themselves in the foot. If it's close and they're playing pretty good football and they lost, I'll take it. But if they're shooting themselves in the foot and they're losing, I'm not going to take it. That's my perspective from a Lions fan right now. A little bit upset at that loss because this is a team. This might have been our best chance to win a football game in these first 4 weeks, at least going into the game. And Lions maybe a little bit better on paper than Chicago, and they lost by 10. So Lions just have to stop making these mistakes, especially in crucial situations like in the red zone. If the offense can convert, because we've seen the defense play well before. I mean, we saw them play well overall against Baltimore. They've been able to make some stops. Just give the offense a chance, and the offense just has to capitalize. Hopefully against Minnesota, things will get better. Because later on in the season, they're going to have Pittsburgh, Cleveland. It's just we'll see. But I there has to be some sort of positive direction. And I know Dan Campbell's only coached 4 games, but they got to start have guys not making mistakes. Make sure to check out all the other great content on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, the Fan Report and Michigan Podcast. Michigan, how about that? 5-0, and Michigan State also 5-0. They're in the top 15 now. I know we didn't talk much about it on the podcast here. Hopefully next week, but my goal is hopefully Michigan and Michigan State are undefeated by the time they play each other on October 30th. Undefeated. That would be amazing. That would signal Michigan and Michigan State football are back. So a nice win for Michigan at Wisconsin, and then a nice win for Michigan State against Western Kentucky. So make sure to check out the Michigan Podcast, the Fan Report, the Wrestling Podcast. They're all the Practice Squad. They're all really, really good. And, of course, John McAroon and his coverage with SI Lions always does a great job with that. That's for sure. Well, let's see if the Lions will win on Sunday against the Vikings. We'll talk to you guys next week, only on Open Mic Night.